Good morning, everyone, and welcome to H100 Happy Hour here, where we have Sander Andersen, who's Executive Chairman of H100, and Brian Brookshire, who's Head of Bitcoin Strategy at H100. I consider both now like friends. We've met several times. Brian, both of you have been on here before. Great to see you in New York last week. Thank you for being here. Welcome. How are you guys doing?
Thank you for having us again, Anders. Doing great.
Yeah, doing great. Happy to be back on your show, and happy that you're back as well.
Yeah, I was not do like over the summer. There was just a lot of things going on, including summer. But now I'm trying to get back on producing a high quantity of shows. So you have created a BDC yield of 200, I think 62% just here in Q3. So together with SWC, you are very fast running, high yielding, doing great. Tell me more about everything.
So I think we are now going from phase one to phase two. Like the first phase was really about using our network, scaling the Bitcoin treasury to above 1,000 Bitcoin, and from here we of course aim to 10x that, and that requires the organization to look a little bit different, and that's also why we have changed Johannes, which has served as our COO for since we started the company back in April, now going over to be the CEO of the company, and I moved to executive chairman. And the reason for that is basically that we think that the next step of this company require us to work a little bit different. It's all nice and good that we did all these private placements over the night and over the weekend, and that speed of execution has really taken us to where we are today. But now we basically need to everything we do around capital structuring needs to be more professional, but also taking a little bit more time to build around big enough to make sense for the Bitcoin stack we have today. And especially in an environment where our stock has a little bit lower volume and liquidity compared to some of the other players in the industry, we need to think a little bit differently on how to scale the organization. And that's what we are doing now. And we when we met in New York, we did a two-week roadshow, meeting family offices, high net worth individuals, but also banks, to see like how do we scale this to the next level, which we believe requires a lot of different tactics than compared to what took us from 0 Bitcoin to 1,000 Bitcoin.
Right. So I noticed you said it's time to get more professional, but from seeing from the outside, you guys, your execution has looked very professional all the way, Sander. But I'm also picking up on, I know before you've told me, well, I know that you are a capital raising beast. I have called you that publicly because you have, and a lot of it has been, as you said, private placement. So I guess the next unlock for H100 that can really drive yield through the ATM is retail trading volume, right?
That's definitely part of the strategy, but I think we have to play on our strength and private placement, and our way of working with investors and building trust has definitely being a big part of our success, and we want to do that. But raising 5 million and 10 million is a little bit different from raising 100 million, which is definitely like where we aim to go from here. That requires a little bit different in how you do the process, how you talk to the investors. And so, that things takes a little bit more time, but you need to have this professional structure around it. It's not that we haven't been professional, but it's different from being a startup from what I call like the 0 to 1,000 Bitcoin, where we're now a scale up, which requires bigger money. It takes a little bit longer in terms of the diligence from the investors. the package we deliver to the investors needs to be a little bit different, and also the infrastructure of how we do the company from, we can't disclose everything around that, but we are trying to do things that attract bigger investors that wants to allocate a significant portion of money to our company, so we can grow in the same speed as we have done, but it will not be like 2 rounds a week anymore, because we need to prepare it and document it and driving the process in a little bit different way. But so that's one part of how we want to grow. We want to be one of the best when it comes to private placement and building investor and professional investor relationship. And on the other side, with Brian as the head of Bitcoin strategy, creating the trust out in the market through communicating on X and trying to be more transparent and more efficient in our communication, so people understand what are you investing in, but also the plans of how we want to scale further.
Right. Is there any comments you want to add to that, Brian, in terms of what you will be focusing on in particular in your role?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've observed just through watching the space for the past few years is that a lot of times the details of the transactions kind of get lost in translation when people start talking about them on X. So I think one of the ways for a lot of companies to add value in the vein of transparency is to really explain how the deal works. What are the terms? How is it different than other deals that have been done before? How does it look compared to other deals that might be done? And so I think just really explaining all the details, explaining what we're doing in a very detailed and meticulous way, so that people really understand what's happening at every step of the way, I think is what investors really want. And that is what I think one of my strengths is breaking down complex financial topics into easily understandable bits. And so that's one of the things that I intend to work on, both on the strategy side in terms of looking at what has worked and hasn't worked with other deals in the past, and bringing that knowledge to our execution. And also bringing just very good detailed explanation of what we're doing, so that people can really be clear and understand and feel comfortable with it.
Yeah, I mean there has been in US some deals, pipe structures or whatever, where I think retail investors, we don't go and read the whole prospectus and all the fine print. And there was some things that were there explaining, could have prepared people for how it was going to play out. But as retail investors, we don't necessarily see that. And then a lot of people got burned. So that's nice if you're doing what you can to avoid that. And also, I think, you're not using pipe, as I understand. So there's not that same risk or danger of dumping of shares. Is that completely off, or is that kind of explaining the situation?
So I think every Bitcoin treasury company should use the tools they have available. It's more a question of how you use it, not if you use it. That's true for ATM. That's also true for private placement. PIPE is a private investment into public equity. That can be done in 1,000 different ways. So for me, it's more understanding like how do you do that structure, and that's also coming back to how to be more professional in doing it. First, you have to explain to the market what you're doing, and then ensure that it doesn't put too much bad investor into the pipe that will put significant sell pressure on the stock. But we are in the business of accumulating as much Bitcoin as we can. And I think it's fair to say that every Bitcoin treasury company should use the tools they have available, but do it in a professional and transparent way, so people understand what they are investing in, and also the path that Bitcoin treasury company is on, and why I should invest now for the future value, or why I should invest now to get the future value of the company.
Right. So I want to share. Christina is there watching again. That's awesome. She always has good takes. But I want to share just this I'm trying to put together kind of like for my own sake, but also really to highlight the different tools that Bitcoin treasury companies like yourself have to generate a yield. Kind of, I guess, listed a little bit after maybe how much they on average help out companies raise funds in your industry. Can you put some words on how much you're using these right now, and how you see that maybe develop over 6 months or so? The ATM, do you have a functioning ATM now in the company?
So we currently have prepared anything, everything for us to start an ATM, but we don't see a reason why to activate it right now.
Okay. So, and then, but the next one, the institutional stock sales, that's where you really have excelled, right, and have driven the high yield since the start of your listing, basically. So you're strong on that one. The next one there, if we take a look, is the preferred perpetual debt, which right now only Strategy has out there, but we all know that all of you are looking at when is it the right time to launch that. Can you comment on that, or you can't say anything yet? How you see perpetual preferred debt, which means debt that doesn't have to be paid back ever, you just service it with yield?
Yeah, I think I publicly said it before, but we think those kind of instruments should be launched sooner rather than later. It depends again how you do it. Should it be a listed product, or should you sell it to institutions? Like, should you sell those products to family offices, pension funds, insurance companies? Like, without having all this trading dynamic, it's multiple ways where you can do that, as long as you don't do it in a too big of a proportion of your Bitcoin stack. So the question is how you do it, how it fits into the regulatory environment. But I'm a big fan of looking at how does all this private wealth and like this private capital looking into getting Bitcoin exposure. And I think that's a huge untapped potential with instruments like these yielding instruments backed by Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah, Brian, go ahead.
Yes, I think that us being listed in Sweden, we have some very interesting opportunities. I mean, one thing that I frequently try to highlight is that the benchmark rate in Sweden is structurally lower than the United States. For the past 10 years, it's been consistently lower, and the benchmark rate was just cut from 2% to 1.75%. So I think we are in a very good position to conquer fixed income markets at very favorable rates. The other thing that I think is worth considering is that market access is different in different markets. If we were launching a product into the United States, the size requirements for drumming up institutional interest are probably different than what we would encounter in the Swedish market or the Nordic market at large. So I think that given the size we are in the market we're in, I think we potentially have a great deal of flexibility in being able to issue fixed income instruments that might not be the case if we were located in another market.
Right, simply because the interest rate level is so low in Sweden that it'll be relatively more attractive than if you offered the same yield in the United States, for instance.
Yeah, both because of the rate and just the willingness of capital markets partners to work with players of different sizes.
Right.
So it's often talked about you need X amount of size to launch a fixed income product, and I think that where that X is different depending on your market. And at the end of the day, I think it's not so much about size as can you find buyers for the product, and can you execute it in such a way that the fees are reasonable given the size of what you're executing on.
And I haven't heard before what you said, Sander. which I think is very interesting, that you're also seeing the option or opportunity to sell these perpetual preferreds privately, and not necessarily list them. So I guess you're avoiding the cost of listing, which I guess is what is preventing or making a lot of Bitcoin accumulating companies push it a little bit, because it costs a lot of money to list that preferred equity. But it's interesting that's something you see a potential demand for also to do privately, and then I guess it can always later on be listed, or
Yeah, exactly. So you can start offering products like that in the private market with a few buyers, rather than making it super complicated and making it a separate listing. And I think that is true for most Bitcoin related products that Bitcoin treasury companies can issue. You don't necessarily need to make them public, because, for example, the private credit industry is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and their average yield is around 7-8%. But they take a lot of operational risk. They take a lot of where they often work with a private equity firm where they buy another company. Here you can do the exact same thing, but the only thing you need to look at is the underlying asset, which is Bitcoin, and the performance of Bitcoin over time. So it's a huge market for fixed income products, also in the private market, even if you are a publicly listed company with a significant Bitcoin stack. And I believe that a lot of these fixed income and private market investors will look for Bitcoin exposure in one way or another. And I think Bitcoin treasury companies are in the perfect position to take that opportunity and grow their stack that way.
So if you're talking about Bitcoin exposure through perpetuals, then I presume you're thinking along the lines of what strategy has launched Strike, where there is a convertibility to the company stock, which no one has an incentive to ever do, convert it, because you're higher in the capital stack and you have the dividend, but it will automatically push the price higher of the pref. Is that what you're, because that's the only way they'll get Bitcoin exposure, where if it's straight up something like Stride or Strive, where it's only ever a fiat instrument, there's none of that. So I'm presuming you're thinking along the lines of Strike.
Yeah, that's one example, but it's many ways where investors want Bitcoin exposure, not necessarily directly, but here you have a fiat product that are backed by Bitcoin. So you have like the security in the product is basically like protected on Bitcoin stack below. So, and I believe it's many ways investors want exposure to Bitcoin, and not necessarily all of them is spot Bitcoin. And a lot of the other, it's a lot of investors that want to invest in what they are familiar with. If they can get the term sheet, they can sign the term sheet together with their lawyer. They put the term sheet back into their file system, and they're happy. They don't need to open up another account. They use the environment where they're already very familiar, and they don't need to staff up or anything like that. They just invest into a Bitcoin related instrument, fiat or not.
Right. So it's if nothing else, it's backed by it. It's backed by Bitcoin. So the three of us and other people believe very much in that it's the highest level of quality of collateral backing a debt.
Well, I think there's,
go ahead.
just to elaborate on that point, I think there's a fundamental difference between the types of credit risk that you're taking. With a Bitcoin-backed instrument, Bitcoin-backed fixed income instrument, the capital is already there. You're not, the credit worthiness of the instrument is not based on future cash flows. It's based on capital that already sits on the balance sheet. So even though you're not necessarily exposed to Bitcoin price performance directly with a fixed income instrument like that, you are, it's still Bitcoin exposure in a sense, that the credit risk that you're taking is very, very different than if you're betting on, you know, potentially uncertain future cash flows.
Yeah, gotcha. So if we take a step further here from the prefs, then convertible bonds, I do believe that you already have Bitcoin denominated bonds with Tobam. Is that correct?
So we don't have any Bitcoin denominated convertible bonds now,
Okay.
but we are actively working on it in a tokenized form together with Stocker, which we hopefully will soon be in the market with. And there we play around a little bit with the dynamic on what is, again, like different products, structured products with different outcome. What we have looked at is if it's a Bitcoin denominated bond, but it also follows the Bitcoin price. So the company can't convert if the company doesn't outperform Bitcoin. So a Bitcoin denominated bond with a fiat price conversion can create dynamics where Bitcoin outperform the company, but you still get converted. So what we are trying to do here, if we are successful, is to have a Bitcoin-backed bond, a Bitcoin-denominated bond, but it also follows the Bitcoin price, which means the leveraged Bitcoin treasury company, if it outperforms the Bitcoin price, we convert. If not, you get your Bitcoin back, which is a completely different instrument compared to a fiat bond, where you basically take the fiat, you convert it into Bitcoin, and you do the arbitrage. I think it's room for both.
Right. Brian, any thoughts there you want to add on, or?
Yeah, I'm
off?
very excited about this new instrument. It's going to be done in a way that hasn't been done before, you know, both with the tokenization and with the conversion mechanism. So I'm very excited about it, and I think that you know, a Bitcoin treasury company, the whole purpose of it is to, you know, increase Bitcoin per share, and if we can do that, then I'm very confident that this product will be very good for us and accretive for us.
Yeah, and it's definitely an interesting development that you're working on tokenizing it, so people can I get, you know, then it's tradable 24/7, I presume, and people can get in and out even in smaller sizes or bigger sizes. So we'll be very interested in seeing how that goes. So the last point of yielding tools, fundraising tools to buy more Bitcoin and create shareholder value is the selling of Bitcoin put options. And I know it's not, so MetaPlanet started that. I believe they're still the only ones doing it. Others are looking at it and choosing maybe not to do it. And I also think there's regulatory areas where you just can't do it. That's what I heard about US. I'm not sure if that's 100% correct, but I heard someone say that you can't do it in US. It would change the classification of the company, and then other advantages of running this treasury playbook would fall away. So is that something that could be relevant for H100, or is it by choice maybe you don't even want to go that route?
But I can speak to that a little bit. I think the US component, I think the issue is not so much that you can't do it, it's the size which you can do it. I believe that's the issue. If you do it over a certain size, that's what triggers the issue. And the threshold is such that doing it at a meaningful scale makes it practically difficult. Yeah, but I mean, for our side, that's something that, you know, we're exploring. It's not something that's actively deployed right now. But you know, Sandra, if you have more comments you want to share about that.
No, I mean, we are looking at a lot of different ways of increasing Bitcoin per share, but we have not decided on anything like a put option structure.
Right. Also, just I want to say thank you to the 200 live viewers currently across YouTube and X, which is the two platforms that I'm streaming to. The fact that you have reached 1,000 Bitcoin now, relatively quickly as well, does that unlock any new capital, or is that I know there is there is a small treasury company fund, I believe, traded in US, where what they do is they buy stock in the companies that have at least 1,000. So it's kind of an index to get a broad exposure to companies that are on a Bitcoin standard and hold Bitcoin. And some of those are companies like yours with a focus of accumulating more Bitcoin. Others like Marathon or Tesla are simply holding their Bitcoin. But does that unlock any capital for you reaching 1,000 as you have now?
I think at the scale we are, both market cap and Bitcoin stack opens up to be included in multiple indexes, like we have been done with the Morgan Stanley Microcap Index locally in the Nordics. We know we need to do some structural difference in terms of what exchange we are listed on to be included in, especially the US indexes that includes the plus 1,000 Bitcoin companies. So I would say like scale gives you a lot of opportunities, and that's what we are seeing now. Putting in a 10 million ticket today is not as risky as it was 5 months ago or 3 months ago. So like the amount of capital you can raise is scale is better. And I think that's why we already have seen the first M&A transaction in this industry. People understand that scale is critical in this industry. And yeah.
Right. I can see it has advantages for several reasons. And at the same time, I guess investors also look at, well, what's the upside from here until the end game in terms of, well, how much more can you grow? Where if you're very big, your yield tends to go down. We've seen that with strategy. It'll be interesting to follow Metaplanet in Q4. In fact, I'm very excited to follow Q4 performance for all of you, because you've definitely reached critical mass, and so has some others, and there's newcomers as well. Do you see Sweden as your home capital market, or is there anything that also makes capital from Denmark or Norway, potentially Finland, come in regulatory easier, or is it mainly like Sweden, and then Denmark could invest as well as someone in Germany could invest? Like in terms of like a natural flow of capital in the local market, is it Sweden or is it Scandinavia?
Yeah, I think it's the broader Nordic investors. That I mean, Sweden, and we are a Swedish company for multiple reasons. One of them is that it's the most active market we have in the Nordics. That being said, I think the biggest advantage of being a Swedish company is like what type of instruments we can issue locally if we get the common stock to be distributed globally. So because Bitcoin treasury companies are basically having shareholders from all around the world, H100 wants to be popular all around the world. But the bigger Bitcoin stack we get, the more competitive advantage we can have home in the local market with, for example, fixed income products. So that's how we look at it. We are a Swedish company. It's very easy to buy and sell the shares in the Nordics, but it's also super important for us to say that we aim to get easy access for investors worldwide with our stock, because the common stock is important for us to succeed with more niche products locally in Sweden and also the other Nordic countries, if we see that positive for the company.
So my slogan that I've been developing internally is that equity markets are global, but fixed income markets are local. So,
right, interesting. And that's where the prefs come in, of course. Right, interesting. I mean, we do see international investors also piling into some of these treasury companies, but interesting point that the the fixed income market is much more a local thing than the stock itself. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you do see international interest in, strategies, preferred stocks, but it introduces new risks. You've got currency conversion risk. You've got tax reporting implications. It adds a lot of friction. It varies a lot based on which jurisdiction you're in, but
Yeah.
it's a much cleaner setup to have a fixed income product denominated in your own home currency, where both that product and you are following the same set of tax rules.
Right. Yeah. Talking about currency, I remember when I went to high school in Australia. Now, I am from Denmark. Most people know that, but I went to high school in Australia with at an international school because I had to be able to use that when I got back home to Denmark. And I had, so there was Swedish friends, Norwegian friends, and at the time, the Danish crown was the weakest of the Nordic countries, but that has since turned around. Also, I think already back then in the 90s turned around, and now the Danish crown is stronger. But in Denmark, we've always looked at Sweden as a Sweden is a very strong shareholder culture. Much more people in Sweden buy stock and use stocks to save up, invest, and protect themselves for the future to a bigger extent than Denmark. I know there's a very strong shareholder culture in Sweden is I'm aware of.
Yeah, and Sweden is also the country that has the most like global companies scaling out. Like you have strong companies in both Norway and Denmark, but they're not so well known. But Sweden is known for taking local product and scaling it globally. Spotify is one example. Klarna is another one.
IKEA.
So it's true. IKEA, Volvo. So yeah. And Sweden also have a very nice insurance policy structure where you can invest for your pension, which basically gives you a much better tax rate on your trading compared to doing it in any other different structure that, for example, Norway doesn't have.
Right. Let's have a look at some of the questions from the chat. It looks like it happens sometimes. I'm only getting the chat in from YouTube. I can't see anything from X. So my apologies, but YouTube is what I can see. I'm not fully sure I don't know what TAM is. Is this something you can you have an answer for? What's the TAM size of fixed income in Nordic market at large? What is TAM?
I don't have that on. TAM is total addressable market.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen some estimates around 800 to 900 billion. We'd have to double check those figures, but those are some numbers that I've seen floated.
Gotcha. So there's another question here. If you'll try to get into US, but I'm an investor sitting in US with a US broker account, and I can buy H100. So I don't know if there's another level of. I think for H100, I think I did have to make a phone call, unlike some of the others international treasury companies. Is that anything you have any comments to? Well,
yeah, I mean,
So
Senator, go
we'll
ahead.
go back. I think, yeah.
no, Brian, you can do that.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, currently the two ways to buy it in the United States, well, actually there's three ways. The easiest way is obviously to buy the OTC ticker, which is HOGPF. It is not available on all brokers. If you use Interactive Brokers, for instance, they do not have the OTC ticker for whatever reason, but you can access the GS9 ticker, which is traded on the Frankfurt Exchange. And also any brokerage that has an international trading desk, you can typically call them over the phone and have orders routed directly to the Nordic growth market. However, I think the question here is more about, would we, uplist from OTC to, say, NASDAQ? And that is, certainly something that's interesting for the future. We're not quite there yet. in terms of potential uplistings? Sander, is that something you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we'll see a lot of dual listings in the Bitcoin treasury space, and I'm very much aligned with Brian on the stock itself is a global product, but the fixed income market is local. So I believe that's the path the company should go as well. We are not there yet, but it's definitely an interesting path, and getting access to the US deep liquidity, I believe, is something that are very important for most Bitcoin treasury companies, and that's why we are going to see a lot of dual listings going forward.
Right. And so with these fixed income products being local, I guess, so I know NASDAQ, I believe, owns both the Copenhagen, the Danish, the Swedish, and the Norwegian exchanges, stock exchanges. But with, in your case, launching, when you choose to launch a fixed income product that is listed, I'm just wondering if it's automatically will be the, Sweden will be the market, not necessarily Denmark and Norway. I guess, again, the currency thing plays in as well, right? I guess Sweden will be the primary market. Would that be correct?
Yeah, we are super bullish on Sweden when it comes to which country to pick in the Nordics, how we see the market now.
Yeah. So I'm throwing up a question here from Cage, because I know they're always good without having read it. So I'm trusting here. Let's see. Christina, I would be curious to hear how you describe the local Nordic investor base, which means in Japan is a bit timid, US is very engaged and active in equity markets, UK is somewhere in between. I think we discussed Sweden has a strong shareholder culture, but what's your you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, Sweden is the best market in the Nordics for sure, especially when you move over to the more main markets that are owned by Nasdaq, as you said. That's where you see significant volumes and can actually be comparable to many of the other bigger European markets.
Interesting. And then Peter has a question here. I don't know if it's, you're working on this, but is there any timeline you can share when you think that might be possible? And that would be the fixed income product, right? On Stalker.
That'd be the Bitcoin denominated convertible bond.
Yeah.
We have worked on this for quite some time now. We hope that we can very soon announce when it's ready. So I think that's what we can say at this point without disclosing any inside information.
Yeah, gotcha. Is there you're on the main stock exchange in Sweden, right? You're not on a secondary. You're on the main, I believe, right?
So we are listed on the Nordic growth market currently.
Okay.
Which is one out of 3 stock exchanges in Sweden, if I'm not mistaken. You have Spotlight, you have Nordic growth market, but for sure the biggest one is Nasdaq. We are currently on Nordic growth market, but with the current liquidity and everything that happens and how global this industry is, we are definitely looking at, okay, what's the best place for H100 to be, and that's part of like the strategy now on how to take it to the next level. We are currently very happy where we are today, but the question is that the right place to be when we approach like 5,000 Bitcoin? That question is still unanswered internally, but hopefully we can. Yeah, that's how we look at it. Right now, we are super happy at the Nordic growth market, but we believe that a more international infrastructure might be required at one point.
Right. So that will be a natural progression at some stage. Is there what does it look like with capital flowing passively from indexes in Sweden, or potentially being part of some large international indexes? What are you part of now, and what will be a natural progression as you grow your Bitcoin stack?
We are already in the Morgan Stanley microcap index, and I believe that's a natural growth path for us when we grow bigger, to be like on the small cap, mid cap, and hopefully eventually large cap as well. So that path is quite clear since we're already included there. But I expect us to be included in more passive inflow indexes when we scale.
And I would add that the opportunity set is broader than even just these passive indexes. There's a broader universe of long-only mutual funds that they reference the indices, or they have their own selection criteria. And as we go larger, we hope to be added to both universes of funds.
Right. So I have most of my questions answered here, but one thing is what I think is interesting to talk about or learn about. Maybe there's something that that you guys want to share that I didn't necessarily know would be an interesting topic to bring up. Is there anything you guys want to touch upon that we haven't spoken about already?
Yeah, I think another thing that are quite unique with our company is the combination between Bitcoin and longevity. And we get a lot of investors coming to us because of that. And we are now doing the first think tank for Bitcoin and longevity in Svalbard late January, where we will invite 50 Bitcoiners and investors to be there. It's pitch black during January. We have named it Expedition Svalbard, which will be for us to come together and build a closer relationship with the current investor, but also future investor, and having great conversation around what we think is the most important thing to drive the world forward, which is basically how do we take care of ourselves and how do we take care of our money. And these kind of activities opens up a new universe of people we reach out to by having this unique experience. And I think I'm very excited about it. I've never been to Svalbard, but on what I've seen, I'm very much thinking that's going to be a very interesting place to be, and also something that will strengthen our company going forward when we are able to create the synergies between Bitcoin and longevity.
So how will so this is an invite only event, right? That you have in Svalbard, right? And
we'll have you can apply to join, and we will
right
to join.
Right. And I'm sure that's going to be fantastic. I presume it's so far north that you don't see the sun during the day, right? It's literally pitch black, and you will have the what's it called, the northern light, where you see those beautiful colors dancing. That can be expected, I presume.
Yeah, for sure.
Excited about that, Brian?
Yeah, one of the lines that Sandra put in his announcement about Operation Svalbard was connecting with nature at the edge of the world. I think that's a really great descriptor for it. So yeah, I think it'll be a very cool event. Longevity is a very interesting topic, and in some of our our prior marketing materials we put out, we've talked about longevity and helping Bitcoiners live to see the final Bitcoin halving in 2140. So I would certainly be happy if I were around long enough to see that.
Yeah, that would be nice. But that's a trip or an event that's happening between you and some investors and other people, I guess, in and around the company somewhat. But what about longevity and like common shareholder base or products from H100 that's not necessarily investor, has nothing to do with investors, but just products or services? Is that something that we'll see some of from H100?
Yeah, we actually get pitched ideas quite often, and we see a lot of demand for the Bitcoiners products. First of all, like I think the longevity hospitality industry is quite interesting. How do you connect people? And on the other side, like how do you create products around for Bitcoiners specifically, which is our niche, which I think is very underinvested area, which I hope we can probably acquire and develop and do M&A in the space when we have the right opportunity coming to us. That being said, Bitcoin per share is the main KPI, and we will not do any thing that will slow that process down. But on the other side, I think it's so much overlap between the community and longevity, and there'll be highly profitable businesses coming out from that in the future.
I hear you. Is there, apart from the drivers that we have spoken about, also with the slide where we went through several of the tools you have to raise funds, drive BTC yield, grow the Bitcoin per share, and hence grow shareholder value in a way where over time it outperforms the Bitcoin itself? Is there any other drivers we haven't touched upon that you can talk to in this public forum?
Yeah, I think like one of the core principle of Bitcoin is collaboration and community. And what we have seen over the last few months is that multiple players reach out to us, like exchanges, custodians, other very important players in the industry, to figuring out how to work together. And I think that's a very like underinvested area where I think we will see a lot of interesting products coming even in the near future, because you have this collaborative ethos in the industry where people want to build together and help Bitcoin grow as an industry. And I think Bitcoin treasury companies represent the corporate layer of Bitcoin. And I think we'll see multiple very interesting ideas spinning out when these companies collaborate and figuring out how to create new products, both for the investors, but maybe even like eventually the end user.
Right. So I want to just highlight or share with people that have an interest in terms of this expedition. I thought Svalbard would be like on the one of the northern parts of Norway, but it actually is. Wait, let me just. It's actually an island up significantly north of Scandinavia, all the way up there. I don't know if people understand, it's that part there. It's that island. So we're talking very significantly northern of Scandinavia.
I think this is also where the International Seed Bank is hosted.
Basically, Seed Bank?
Yeah, basically there's this worldwide repository of seeds for plants that if there's ever any kind of ecological disaster, they're kept there under like super deep freeze conditions so that we could repopulate the vegetation on the planet should we so need to.
So yeah. Oh, interesting. But definitely, if anyone should have any doubt, this is very northerly. That's got to be above the Arctic Circle. Polar bears. Someone said, David Thompson said, just don't get eaten by polar bears. I guess there's polar bears in that neighborhood, or
it is, and it's actually you're not allowed to go out from the town without a guard following you with weapons. So it's definitely polar bears there.
Interesting. No, it's good. I'm looking forward to hear stories when you guys come back. We'll have to do a show on that. Also, Christina here has a comment. If you are willing to share, she would love to hear about H100 team thinks about Bitcoin price between now and year end and into the next year. I guess I have personally been a proponent for the 4-year cycle, but for the bear market to come, we need a blow off top, and we have nowhere near a proper strong bull market with a blow off top, which may give us no bear market next year. Maybe we just continue. What's nobody knows, obviously, and nothing here is financial advice. It's only financial entertainment and education. And if you like the financial entertainment, hit like and subscribe, etc. But what's your thoughts on Bitcoin price, if you're allowed to speculate on that?
I mean, it's my personal opinion, and independently from H100, but I think Bitcoin will surpass the gold industry in the next 4 to 6 years. I think it's going to go way quicker than we expect, and the industry will be way bigger than what we see around the commodity gold. So I don't have any like specific price prediction this year, but I'm a big believer that this is the corporate layer that will push the price to compete with the total market cap of gold.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of time before Bitcoin not only reaches gold, which would put Bitcoin at, I think, $1.2 million, and also definitely just way beyond. I'm totally on board with the target of $25 million per Bitcoin, say 20, 25 years from now, and it's just going to continue. But Brian, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think, you can't be in this business unless you really believe deep down in your bones that Bitcoin is going to continue to appreciate at 30% or more per year. And if you think that Bitcoin is going to be an integral part of the future global financial system, then that is, entirely reasonable path for it to be on to reach a size where that is how it comes to manifest. So will we see big blow-off tops like prior cycles? I don't know. There are lots of interesting charts showing a structural institutional bid that gives it a little bit of a different price characteristic. But yeah, I wouldn't be in this business if I wasn't very optimistic about Bitcoin.
Yeah, same here, and I'm sure it's the same for Sander. All right, so let's do some closing comments that before we end the show. If there's just anything you want to just share, or I guess people can find you on X and listen to and read your thoughts. But any closing comments?
Yeah, just have a few. I think that from the conference we were at last week and the meetings we've had recently, I am very encouraged by how much interest there is still in the space. We're definitely not at peak sentiment, but I think the core believers in the space are still there, and I think the core thesis is still there. That if you believe Bitcoin is an integral part of the future global financial system, if you think Bitcoin appreciation is going to continue to outpace interest rates, then I believe that we are doing all the right things that we should be doing right now, and that this industry has a very bright future.
Yeah, and you're still able to have, despite the sentiment, the negative sentiment that we've seen over the last couple of months, you have still have a diluted MNAV. I just checked on your analytics side of 1.67, which means equity issuance is still accretive and driving the increase in the BTC yield. Sander, any final thoughts from you?
Oh, I completely agree with Brian, and I think I want to end again with a thank you to you, Anders, and everything you do for this industry, and giving us the chance to speak about ourselves for an hour. It's always I'm always thankful for people doing that to me. So thank you.
Yeah, you're most welcome, and thank you for being here. So I'm doing these shows for really to improve my own understanding, as I think it's the most exciting place within Bitcoin, it's also the most exciting place within TradFi, because the companies like yours outperform everything else on the stock market. And I do this so I can fine tune my own investments and make the right decisions. I have as you know, a small position also in H100, and looking forward to see the further growth and development. And at this compressed level, I'm very bullish for the future. We just don't know if it's Q4 or next year, but things look ready to start moving up, I would say.
Completely agree.
All right.
Absolutely.
For some reason, your video, Brian, has frozen, and as David, he mentioned, just thinking about Svalbard froze you. We could still hear you, so that's perfect. All right, thank you so much, gentlemen. Nice to have you on. Thank you for being here, and thank you for everyone. About 300 people live watching right now across X and YouTube, for tuning in. I hope you found it useful.